Gottlieb system1 Sinbad. She says the ball doesn't kick out. But before I do anything, well, first we should note that this game has a 9-watt replacement CPU board in it, which is great. I mean, that's a good thing. But before I do anything, before I even turn it on, I didn't do the ground modifications. I just really think it always needs to be done on every one of these games. So what I've done here is on the power supply, I replaced the filter cap with a 4700 microfarad. I could have gone a lot higher. I probably could have gone up to 10,000 microfarad, but that's just what I happen to have kicking around. On the negative lead of this cap, I ran it to the ground, and remember, these green with the yellow lines are all ground wires. Then on the CPU board, even though it's a 9-watt, I still do the ground modifications, because it's not the board that's the problem, it's the wiring and the whole system, not the board itself. So if you look closely, right here is the ground trace, and I just run a wire from there up to the middle backplane. And then likewise on the driver board, I do a similar thing, again with a wire right here on the bottom of this lead of this capacitor to the middle ground. Okay, so now I've got all the ground mods done. I want to turn the game on for the first time, but before I do that, I'm going to disconnect power going to the CPU board. I'm just going to take this harness right off, and I want to test the voltages on the power supply before I actually power up the remainder of the game. So you can see across the top here, it's actually labeled. We've got +5 here, common, and -12. And look, I can see a problem already. Look at this thing. Look, you see that wiggling? You see that wiggle? See that? That means the header pins are cracked on this power supply. We're going to have to take this power supply apart and resolder that. Get the power supply off this metal frame. You've got to unsolder it. I mean, there's a couple screws on the back. There's a screw for this transistor, that transistor, and then a screw here and there for this big transistor. But then you've got to unsolder these 2 points to split the case, and then you can get to the back side. I don't know if you can see it, but look, it's wiggling bad, so you got cracked solder joints on all those leads. And that's going to cause problem. Every one of these is cracked. It's got to be resoldered. And then we can reinstall it. With the bottom connector on and the 2 side connectors off, game powder on, I can use my meter and check all the voltages, and they all appear to be good. The 9-watt doesn't use -12, so that one doesn't really matter if it's there or not. Really what matters is +5. And then down here you got to check 60 volts, the 42 volts, the +4 volts, and the 8 volts. And everything appears to be good now. And this connector is no longer loose, so we're good to hook it back up and give it a whirl. Now I have this connector removed from the CPU board, and I have all the connectors on the power supply hooked up. We can try a power on. The reason why I disconnect the driver board is that I don't want any of the solenoids to kick in. So, power on, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's good. And then we should come up with a high score. Come on, baby. There we go. All right, so the 9-watt is running. We've got all the scores on our displays. So now we can go to the next thing and hook up the driver board. Before I turn it on with the driver board installed, I just kind of like to look at the coils down here, maybe check the resistance. And just from a visual examination, I didn't even get the meter out, I could see a couple things. First off, the playfield solenoid fuse was blown. I've removed it, but it was blown. And I think the reason was this coil right here. It really looks burnt. I know that might be a little hard to see there. That's probably better. You can see that the wrapper is discolored. So the resistance isn't bad, 2.5 ohms. I think that's about right for this coil. But I would say that there's probably an issue here because that fuse was blown and this is discolored. For this coil number, which is an A22550, 2.5 ohms is fine. But you know what? That's the wrong coil. This should not be an A2200 550. That's like a Chicago coin coil or something. The coil that should be in there, according to the manual, is a Gottlieb A5195. And these are 12 ohms, not 2.5 ohms. So 2.5 ohms makes this coil really, really strong. And it also puts a lot more stress on that driver board transistor. The lower the resistance, the more current that passes through quicker and that's why the coil is more powerful, but it also stresses the driver board transistor significantly more. Having in the original 12 ohms coil in there, you're not going to have nearly the stress. So this coil's got to come out, this coil's got to go in. The game powered on. Nothing's locked on, obviously, because I don't have a playfield fuse in. I'm going to take my circuit breaker fuse and just momentarily, oh, look at that. It locks that coil right on. So we've got a problem here with the driver transistor that controls this up on the driver board. One thing about System 1 games is coil usage is fairly consistent. This is always going to be for a drop target reset. These ones over here are for the relays, the game over, and the tilt relay, and the lights for certain features. But these ones in the middle, and oh yeah, and then the ones over here are always for the coils. You know, the knocker, the 10, 100, and 1,000 point chimes. And these ones are kind of, these three are the ones that can be used for other stuff. I just happen to know that I looked at the coil and it was attached to a blue, the drive was a blue wire with a red line. And that's this connector right here. I can see it right there. And I just happen to know that that goes to this transistor. So using my meter, I'm going to test these. First, I'm going to test this one here that I'm pretty sure is good, just for a comparison. And we can see that I've got on one side, I've got 0.5, and on the other side, I have 0.4. That's a good transistor. Now I'm going to go to the one that I suspect is the out-hole coil transistor and test it and see we got 0.6 on one side, that's fine. Then on this side, move the contact over and get the right outside leg, and you can see that transistor is a dead short. So this guy is shorted. That's what's locking on the out-hole coil, and that's why the fuse blew. Got the transistor removed. Another indicator of a problem is look at the burn marks on the board. That's always a bad sign. So I'm ready to power on with all the fuses installed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the 9-1 version number is shown, and then if you go to play power up chime, it's a power up song, and the high scores are displayed. Now I noticed one thing here, there's no playfield lights. Well, let's start a game. Oh, let's put the ball in. Okay, so our out hole kicker is working. Bumpers work. Drop targets are down. After it scores everything, it should reset them. And it does. Perfect. Flippers work. Wow, pretty strong too. Alright, so looks like everything is working. Ball shoots to the out hole to the shooter lane. So we just got to fix these lights, and I have an idea what that problem might be. Here's the bottom board. Right here is the playfield lamp fuse, 10 amps. It's good. I checked all those fuses before. But what there is the tilt relay right here. And the tilt relay turns the playfield lights off when the game tilts. Now this relay over here is the game over relay. That controls the flipper. So here I am hitting the flipper buttons. It does nothing. But if I manually hold this guy in, I'll just push him down like that. Now those guys work. And the pop bumpers work. So that's what the game over relay does. When you start a game, that engages. But the tilt relay will be in this position, it's unenergized position, unless the game is tilted. And when it tilts, all the playfield lights shut off. So if we just look at the switches here, look right there. I have one switch that is just misadjusted on the tilt relay. So I just gotta bend that a little bit so that when the relay engages, it turns off the playfield lights, but when it's not engaged, all the playfield lights are on. So that's what I want to see. And that's all there is to it. So then when we start a game, you'll notice the O or the game over relay will pull in. Okay, so now the flippers work and the pop bumpers work. But and you can see that this relay is indeed engaged. And that's the game over, but the tilt relay shouldn't go until the game actually physically tilts. And we could make a tilt by hitting this, and look, it engaged this relay. Now this relay is engaged, and all the playfield lights go off. And then when the ball hits the out hole, it should turn them all back on, and that relay should disengage. And it does, and it kicks the ball back to the shooter lane. So we know it's working correctly. Now we can play a little Sinbad. Go, baby. Alright, so I suck. It's hard to play one-handed. Please forgive me. But, it looks like we got a good game. I think it needs a little more angle. Needs a little more angle. Yeah, we're going to add a little more angle. And then make it a little faster. This game could be a little faster.